Hi, and welcome to Cameo, the virtual professional learning series for arts, media, and entertainment educators from AME Institute. I'm Ashley Adams, and I'd like to give a special thanks to John Moncrief and Nicole Campbell, our partners at Side Effects, makers of Houdini, for suggesting and curating today's conversation about virtual production and the AME classroom. Please use the Q&A feature to ask any questions you may have and the chat feature to engage further with this conversation and share how you are teaching students virtual production in your classroom. Deborah Isaac, artist, educator, and founder of the Houdini School, will be facilitating our discussion today. So welcome, Deborah, and I'll let you go ahead and introduce our fantastic panel.
Thank you so much, Ashley, for having me. With me today, Judith Crow, a VP of Strategic Partnerships at Side Effects. She has over 30 years of experience applying technology to creative fields, including both films and games. Rob Stauffer, Head of Technical Consulting at Side Effects. He has over 25 years in computer graphics and visual effects. So excited to talk with you both today. My first question is for Rob. Can you explain to our audience what is virtual production?
Sure. So virtual production, there's essentially virtual production is the combination of live and physical elements of production, film production, like you would see on a typical film set, along with digital aspects of that. There's a lot of bits of this technology that's been around for a long time, things like rear projection and matte painting and so on. But I think in the last couple of years, with the advancements in things like real-time game engines and LED walls, that what virtual production for most people really means is the ability to, be on set in an environment that is projected in an LED wall on green screen. That's all being driven by computer graphics, but yet you are still on a physical set as you would typically do on a film set.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to take a step back and actually ask each of you about yourselves. Rob, could you talk about your past and your career and what got you to where you are now?
Sure. So I started in CG and computer graphics in the 90s. I worked in post-production in Arlington, Virginia for a number of years before going to LA and working at Digital Domain, as well as, Weta Digital and Sony ImageWorks. I worked on movies like Spider-Man 2, Lord of the Rings, X-Men First Class. And throughout my career, I've sort of was, involved in things like water and destruction and fire and pyro. And throughout my career, I was always using one particular piece of software, which was Houdini. And so when I decided I was ready to make a change, it was a natural evolution to join Side Effects that makes Houdini, and because it's been a part of my life for 25 years. So, yeah.
Wonderful. Judith.
Yes. So
tell us about yourself and what brought you here.
I will. I'll have to go back a little further than Rob did.
Yeah, please.
But my background was actually in photography, but I became curious about what computer graphics would mean to photography in the mid 80s. And it was a time when it was clear that technology was going to have to sit in the right hands to be used for the right purposes. So I came at it very much from that sort of perspective. But I did have a chance to go back to college, do my master's in computer graphics. And then I had various jobs, teaching, coding, doing animation for theme park design, and doing some software training and technical support and so on. So it was a really circuitous route, but during which I moved to Los Angeles from London via Australia. So I found myself here at a very, very interesting time for film visual effects. Mm-hmm. And in early '94, I actually landed at Digital Domain for my first film production job. And I do want to talk in a little bit of detail about what we were doing there then, because I think it really relates to the conversation we're having now, even though it's 30 years on. Because that was the time when we had very active production stages at the studio. So the digital artists had connection with practical effects, with practical photography. So we utilized practical models and motion control rigs on shows like Apollo 13. We introduced motion capture for doing digital stunt doubles on Titanic. Mm-hmm. We did stereoscopic movies that had to fit in physical theatre spaces and integrate with the live audience experience for things like Terminator 2 3D. And then we did there was early previs for shows like Fight Club, where they had to, really work out very particular camera lens usage and so on. And then we had 2D into 3D and 3D into 2D and, all sorts of experimentation about how we move data around from one environment to another. And, all the time, although we were severely limited by the capabilities of the technology then, all the time we were developing a lot of tricks for getting real-time or, near real-time feedback into our workflows so that we could get feedback for better informed decision making. So, as I was thinking about this today, I was thinking, wow, this is just not, there's new stuff for sure, but there's a lot historically that I think all of us can draw on and should make sure we draw on. And we need to make students today aware of the traditions that they're part of and continue to learn from that. So we didn't call it virtual production then, but a lot of those components were there, and now it's much improved by having better defined and shared workflows, and clearly by the technological advancements, because the impact of real-time game engines has just been immeasurable on the particular bit of the industry. So just to move ahead quickly before I take up all the time. So I actually joined Side Effects myself 20 years ago when I moved sideways into software. I'd always loved how innovative the tech was, and I'm just drawn to tech. That's a huge driver for me, being in a place where I can see how that innovation is happening. But while I've been there, I've consulted with film studios, and then I started at the games portion of the business and learned a lot more about how real-time could apply. And briefly was in charge in sales of marketing before moving to partnerships. So I ended up having a lot of different kinds of conversations with very different constituents over the time. And, I've really seen the emergence of this crossover between film and games, what each has brought to the other. And in a lot of ways, virtual production is the sort of the offspring of that ungodly convergence.
It does seem like the convergence of film and games, using both of those technologies together. And the goal of visual effects has always been, right, to make the seamless combination of the fake and the real together. And virtual production has that same goal. What are the different use cases? This question is for Rob. What are the different use cases for virtual production? Is it only visual effects, or does it go beyond that?
Well, it's not necessarily, and that's also, I think, something we should highlight is that there's a lot about virtual production that is not that different from old production. It's like if you're on a film set, a lot of the same people are still there. I think that there's a lot of additional people as far as like running the Unreal side of things and the LED wall and all that stuff. But also too, I'm sure many people in this room today are familiar or have seen a lot of things around the Sphere in Las Vegas, which is a lot of LEDs and LED walls. And so there's a lot of immersive things that can be happening there. So virtual production is one thing, but there's a lot of technology that comes out of that benefits so many other areas. And a lot of it is around that idea of an immersive experience. It's like this allows you to have that, like something before that's so realistic that we couldn't do before. And so I think if you step away from that idea of this, oh, I'm making a movie like The Mandalorian. It's like, no,
Right.
there's a lot of technology here that we can all benefit from and that we can all really take advantage of. So,
Yeah, that goes beyond the set. The same
right,
tech that can be used for all kinds of things that are being used for right now.
for sure.
Um, and in that vein, what advice would you give educators in terms of how they could incorporate these kinds of technologies?
I think it's, for me, I think it's great to think, oh God, it's so corny, but like think outside the box. There's so many great ways to use the technology. There's architectural visualization. There's so many things like people, even within virtual production, there are people that are working on films that will do a tech scout totally in VR. So they will
Ooh,
go to a location and put on goggles and be able to look around and see,
that's
okay, this is
cool.
what I'm getting to. So there's a lot of technology involved in all these areas. There's even outside of the LED wall and the VR thing, there's ways to, you're simulating the, every product you see, IKEA, Wayfair, like there's so much out there that's
Right.
probably digitally created.
Yeah.
It's like clothing,
And
there's a
augmented
lot out there.
reality. Yeah.
Totally. Because the beauty of it is you can get something that's so realistic to be able to
Hmm.
get your point across. So that's the thing that we have so many tools these days that are so available to us that I think that's the exciting part about all this. So forget about the VP part, just learn the technology.
The
You know,
technology.
yeah, it's the technology. Yeah.
Would you recommend certain softwares, Unreal, for example? Um,
Um,
of course, Houdini, everybody should learn
of
Houdini.
course,
I can say.
am I allowed to say that? Yeah. I love Houdini. So of course
Yeah,
I mean, but also don't be blind. It's like everything changes all the time so
right.
rapidly. Even Houdini, it's like I work here and I still can't
Yeah,
keep up. So, so it's good to just stay on top of things. There's so much good stuff happening out there with all this software and there's a lot of people out there that are doing amazing things. You can see it on YouTube and Instagram about how they're using, whether it's Blender or Houdini or Unreal or
right.
Unity. Like there's a lot of stuff out there to learn from, and it's super inspiring. Like I'm so intimidated. Like I'm gonna put out a silly little fire sim. It's like that. I feel like like wow. It's embarrassing, but yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So this question is for Judith. More generally speaking, regarding just the future of technology, CG, visual effects, games, immersive experiences, how do you see jobs changing in the future? What are we going to see less of? What are we going to see more of?
That is a big one. And I wish I could confidently tell you the answers, but as Rob says, things are changing all the
Yeah,
time. And I
yeah,
think, and it's so strange. Here am I saying we can look back 30 years and learn from that. And yet we have to hold that idea in our hand at the same time as something that says that I have no idea where we'll all be in 5 years. So it's a very interesting place we find ourselves. I think that true expertise in at least one thing is really more and more important. The
mhm,
entry level jobs, they're just absolutely going to get automated out of existence, and so spending the time to get deeply knowledgeable about something, and not just knowledgeable, but expert in a practical sense, I think is very important. Um, at the same time, this may seem contradictory. I think it's
right.
really important to be a generalist.
Yeah,
You have to have knowledge about how all the parts connect, relate, communicate. And, speaking specifically about virtual production here, you're talking about a collaborative environment where you have to play your part and understand the roles of all the other parts and how to communicate. So while you need the expertise, you also have to be a generalist, I think,
right.
to survive and prosper in this world. I think, well, Rob's already talked about some of the areas where these technologies are going to have other kinds of impacts. And another interesting thing that I'm seeing a lot is people who are taking skills they've learned in media entertainment and starting to apply those in other industries. So there are also, we're talking about the convergence of film and games. There's also this convergence between M&E and non-M&E that's really interesting. We've got, game engines being used for autonomous vehicle training or computer vision.
Right.
And then you've got the machine learning kind of capabilities coming into M&E. So I think opening people's eyes to some of those other options is also worth doing,
Right.
particularly for the people who aren't in the visual effects work because they just so dearly love movies. If they're in it because they love the kind of problem solving that it brings to their attention. If they love those processes, there are many other ways they can apply them. So, as certain kinds of jobs close down and go away, other really exciting opportunities are going to open up, and just be alert to those. I think. Let's see, what else can we cover here? It's a related topic. I was talking to one of our customers yesterday, and he was talking about how they just come up with a new job title, synthetic data artist, right? So that's not a job I've seen advertised yet, but they have felt the need to go through that HR process, and you can imagine what that looks like and how long it takes to actually come up with a whole new job definition for a synthetic data artist. So that would be somebody who's capable of creating large data sets of, probably realistic world scenarios that can be used to train for machine learning. So again, another place where taking those skills that are all about making digital versions of the real world.
Right.
That's important in virtual production, also important somewhere else. So I don't want to beat that theme to death, but there you go. That's one way.
Yeah. It's super interesting. And I almost think it feels like, I don't know if you agree, but it feels like it's getting faster. The change is accelerating.
I think that's being over 60. I mean, you're not over 60, but I'm sure that but yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Like you said 5 years, it does. I get that feeling too. Like the next 5 years, we will see a lot of transformation. And I think across the board, including virtual production and non-virtual production. And, maybe people will be able to have virtual productions in their living rooms with LED walls and all of that.
You can.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, actually, if I could just add one little thing to last answer, as Rob said, it's all about the technology, the technology, and I agree. But at the same time, I think liberal arts are going to see a resurgence, because I think that the interdisciplinary nature of all of this is going to require the kinds of skills that people have who know how to tell stories and design and understand users and do all those kinds of things that you learn through liberal arts subjects. So it's combining that together with the
I love that. I hope you're right. And
yeah, maybe
Well, I agree.
We
I
need
think
that.
that's true. That's totally true. If you think about like when electronic music, like the concern about, drum machines and all that, like there was a time when I was a kid, that was a long time ago, that was a big deal. Like, oh, what does this mean?
Yeah.
And so eventually you realize that there might have been a big chunk of time that there was a lot of music that was being put out there that was really easy to produce and create and so on. But eventually the artists really shone through, right? Like the
Right.
the
It's not about
posers
the
went
medium.
away. No, it's not about the medium. And so that's totally true. I agree with that too. I think that's
I propose
important.
a fun project for the teachers out there, actually. I heard once about a classroom where the entire class built a car together. I think it would be neat if the entire class made a virtual production studio together. And it wasn't just about leaning on IT or the school. What if it could be something, that
Yeah.
with like a low budget type of thing that the students really learned to use their hands and got in there.
Well, I
Um,
think that's a good thing. I'm glad you brought that up. If I can jump in, is because um, I've talked to a lot of different levels of film students, and I was shocked that there's a lot of places out there that they teach film and they teach computer graphics or visual effects, but they don't talk to each other. And I think
mhm.
that that's
Yeah,
like this is a ripe opportunity to be able to learn the problems that each side is having, and
right.
even not, it was as recent as 8 years ago where I spoke to a film student that didn't really even know how to shoot for something that would be visual effects. So
Hmm.
if I was
Hmm.
to say, what could you do in that world? You guys should work together. You have
Yeah.
you have people that want to do all these things, make a big project. That would be amazing.
I've seen that a lot in schools. The students definitely
Yeah.
have to take initiative when it comes to
Yeah.
really working interdisciplinary like that. So that
Yeah.
should be the future of education, is that kind of interdisciplinary collaboration. Um, this is a question for both of you. More about the challenges or obstacles that are present in the industry. I mean, we're talking about a lot of different industries at the same time, but in general, we are talking about computer graphics, visual effects, emerging technology, really. What are some of the challenges that students are going to face, you think? Um, Anyone want to take that?
I actually think it would be way more challenging to be the educator than the student.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
I mean, students are picking new stuff up all the time. It's all they have
right.
to think about every day.
Yes,
I
right.
cannot imagine what it's like for educators right now to have to make the hard choices about what and how to stay current with all the changes that are happening. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but I just think that's kind of unenviable. Um, so actually, I mean, I'd if anyone wants to drop any comments in the chat about that, I'd love to hear how
Right.
people do that.
I
Uh,
think as teachers have to also be learners is really what it ends
Yeah.
up being. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean,
I think
obviously, when
there's
it
a
comes,
go
oh,
ahead,
go
Go
ahead,
ahead,
Jen.
Rob.
Rob.
No, I think that we're in in the visual effects world in particular, we we crossed over into this period for the last, say, 10, 15 years where um, there was the idea that, like, oh, if I teach this software, I'm going to get this job in this industry. So
Yeah.
go learn Maya, then you're going to have a job. Like
Right.
it's this one-to-one relation.
Right.
And I think that um, like Judith was saying, it's like, at some point now the technology has gotten to a point that it's accessible to everyone. It's in varying degrees of success. You can learn it, and so now we're getting back to that aesthetics. It's like what looks good, like learning again about it's not about knowing where the buttons are. It's about like
Yeah.
it's
The finished
about
product.
teaching art again.
Yeah.
Teaching art again. Because for the most part we're digital artists, so it's teaching
Hmm.
art again. So
Yeah, and I
Oh,
think the new brains, the young brains coming into this are used to all the apps and the iPhones. They were born with the technology,
sure.
so it could be different.
I think when we go back to the challenges of learning virtual production in a practical way, obviously access to the facilities themselves is perhaps tricky, but there's actually, I'll drop it in the chat. This is not a bad resource for finding just a list of all the facilities that are local. Am I able to drop this in here? I have no idea how this works.
In the audience chat, I believe you can.
Aha! All right. See, technology. Yeah. I mean, it's just something I found that you can look by region and so forth and find all the stages. And these are, they all have an interest in seeing the next generation be educated in all of
Yeah.
this. I mean, it's to their advantage to open their doors to educators. So I think spending some time building up the relationships with different kinds of vendors and
Oh yeah.
do some of the work for you. That's one way to go.
Field trips.
And since we're, I'll put this. I just this week was published. Let's see if I can find this quickly. A new handbook, and I wish I could say I'd had time to read this, but I just downloaded it yesterday. But there's a new visual, does that focus? I don't know, Visual Effects Society handbook of virtual production that is now on Amazon, and I'm sure every good bookshop everywhere, kind of thing. It's actually very reasonably priced. It's for $60 for the paperback version, which is quite something. So I really, like I say, I haven't read it, but if you look at the number of people who've contributed to this and who they are, and it's pretty impressive. So, there are good resources out there. It just right now takes a little bit of ferreting around to find
Those
them.
are two great resources. So thank you for that. And we kind of touched upon this maybe, but did you want to say anything about soft skills? This is in line with how do we prepare students for the future? And they have to be adaptable. They have to both be experts and know a little bit about everything at the same time. So that goes into how to design a curriculum. But what about things that aren't normally taught in school about how to be successful? Does anyone want to chime in there?
I
Rob,
can.
go for it.
No, I mean, I think that plays into what I was saying about the working on a project together, because
Yes.
you're never going to be doing this stuff on your own, and there's a lot of emotion, and I think it would be an amazing experience to just have to deal with that. It's when you're working by yourself, it's amazing. Everything is awesome. Everything I do is awesome because I work by myself now. But 15 years ago it wasn't. So I think that's I think are things that maybe is sometimes overlooked because we so focus on the skills to get you that job. But what about the other stuff? Like what about like if any of you have ever been on a film set, like you have to be careful. Like it's
Yeah.
like it's a landmine. Like you have to learn how to be respectful of so many things, and so that's stuff that I think people, it's valuable, especially if you want to get into that world. And also too, just learning about the fact that it's easy when you're doing your own projects to really want to push it to be that way,
Mm-hmm.
but real life is you have other opinions and stuff, and so sometimes that's hard. I'm 52 and I still don't like other people's opinions sometimes. It's like so it's good to kind of get used to that, I think. So
Thank you so much. We're going to go to Q&A now. This one from Stephen Wen from Sonora. We are integrating Houdini into our curriculum. Yay! We have After Effects as our compositing software. Will it be easy to composite Houdini layers with footage in After Effects? It's really just about putting the camera in there, and you can definitely add your Houdini camera into After Effects, no problem. I don't know if you guys want to add anything to that.
no, I mean, if it's a rendered image, it doesn't matter as long as you have alpha channels and all that stuff. So it shouldn't matter what you're compositing with, assuming you're doing just a basic sort of composite situation.
Yeah, After Effects is a full compositor. Nuke is
Yep.
more industry standard, but you absolutely can use After Effects and Houdini together.
Yeah.
Next question from Holly. When I worked
Holly
at
Gable.
I do.
Hi, Holly.
When I worked at
We
DD,
both
you
know
know
Holly.
Holly. Holly. Houdini seemed very difficult to use, and as a high school teacher now, it's hard to imagine teaching it to 14 to 18-year-olds. Has it become more user friendly? Um, what do you guys
Judith,
think?
you take that one.
Oh,
Judith will take
take it.
that one.
Yes. No, it's I mean I know when you were at DD and I know what it was like then. For sure. I mean, Houdini, we're always striving to make it more user friendly, and there
Yeah.
are kind of layers on top of it. There are ways to ease people into that. But let's face it, to do complex work, it sometimes takes complex thinking. It takes being able to break down difficult problems and then find a way to express solutions. And there's sort of no way around that, depending on the depth you want to go. But if I think about high school students, in many ways, they would come to Houdini with a more open mind than a lot of people who've already spent some time learning and doing 3D work. And I think you might be surprised at how well they take to the idea of being able to just make sets of rules and visualize the results and get that sort of immediate feedback. So I don't think that they would be intimidated by it in the least. I think at the end of this session, actually, there's going to be a bit of information about a high school program that we're starting up. I hope I'm not misspeaking by saying that, but so maybe there's more answers for you, more in-depth answers coming on that for you.
I also think as a teacher, it's all about how simple you make the demo that you're teaching the students. Yeah. So you can always make a very simple demo and then just keep leveling it up. So it's absolutely possible. And next question by Stephen Fisher. Quick roundabout question. If you were to create a module or course looking at emerging or experimental media production, what would you call it? Emerging technologies?
Experimental media production.
Experimental animation?
That's a tough one. I mean, it's emerging media or experimental media or even just emerging technology. I don't know.
Or just
because it doesn't have to be about media. Yeah.
I call it what's old is new.
Yeah. I call it exhausting.
That's great. Jennifer Penton, is it worth it for a school to purchase an LED wall, or will the technology change so fast that we should ask studios to help us train in a VP volume? I think the technology will make it cheaper. Go ahead, Rob.
So I 100%. So two points to that. Number one, you should totally ask a studio to help you. Like reach out to Epic. I mean, honestly, like they have so many demo studios all over the country. Like that's a no-brainer. The other thing too is I've gone through a couple of fellowships for the LED wall stuff, and you can actually create an LED wall with an LED curved monitor, like so the one I have right here, and I could hold up my little thing here, and that would be my actor. So if you have that and an iPad, you could teach the technology. You learn, like really, it's so accessible. You could totally do that. So look into that because you can. So in terms of Unreal, you can get the iPad app, and you can 100% learn what it is that's happening as far as virtual production.
So cool.
I want to give an example that we had back when I was starting the games segment at Side Effects. We had interns come in, and one of our early interns is called Girish Balakrishnan. He now he runs all the virtual production stages at Netflix. And when he came to us as an intern, the project he'd done that caught my attention was that he'd taken an iPad, he had 3D printed a frame for it and strapped two PlayStation controllers to it. And then he'd installed Unity on a PC, he'd written some code and blah, 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 and he could walk around with this iPad and use it as essentially the PlayStation controllers were getting the orientation and the tracking and so on. And then he could composite the live action pieces into his virtual set that he created with Unity. he did this all with off the shelf or just like little homemade 3D printed things. And it was so impressive. And it was that go get it attitude that means he's now running all the stages of Netflix, So I'm with Rob on that. That's great.
Wow.
No, it's true. It's true. And also too, that brings up another point about the whole theme of virtual production as well, is that it's not just about an LED wall and all that. It's also like way back on, I worked on the Polar Express. And so Robert Zemeckis did all those camera moves virtually. So that was virtual production, but it was because he was trying to use a real camera. He didn't want an animator to animate the camera. He came up with a way to do it as if it was realistic. And that is also virtual production. That's a way to get something that looks realistic using technology. So, yeah.
Are we out of questions?
Oh, the name,
Girish.
Judith, can you repeat the name?
Girish Balakrishnan. I'll write it down.
Yeah. It does seem like technology, as it gets more advanced, becomes more invisible. Like that's the ultimate goal of advancement.
That always used to be my favorite visual effects to work on, are the ones that you didn't know was a visual effect. That's the best part, Yeah.
No, I really would say don't panic, because nothing that you already know is irrelevant. There's new things to bring to bear, but it's not as though the whole world has changed overnight.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so it looks like we're going to share a slide with you all to get some high school licenses for Houdini. Are there any opportunities for field?
Okay, my name is Nicole Campbell, and I'm the Education Account Manager at SideFX. And I wanted to just take this opportunity, since we have you guys all here and we're talking about virtual production and in some ways that Houdini has been used for high schools, actually for any instructor that's teaching Houdini. We do offer free instructor's licenses for teaching purposes so that you guys can dive into the software, learn how it works yourself, and use it. It's eligible for 1 year, and we can renew those annually for you. On top of that, we also offer Houdini Insight, which is just ample amounts of resources for kind of train the trainer. So that's the purpose of that. It's just for instructors' use, but we can also offer that to you for free as well. And then we also offer for high schools. We just recently have started offering free student licenses as well. So if you are interested in integrating Houdini into your curriculum, please reach out to me. My email is there, or you can reach out to education@sidefx.com. That QR code there will take you to our education page at SideFX, so you can kind of just learn what resources are available to you. But yeah, that's all I have. Please feel free to reach out if you guys have any questions. We are happy to help. Thank you.
We're wrapping up this amazing session, but I noticed that there were 2 more questions in the chat, so I thought maybe we could do a quick get to both of those. There was one that said, are there any opportunities for field trips or any sort of outreach programs that you can suggest?
I think that's a question for education. So I would say I can actually help follow up with you on that, and I will reach out to the education team. And it's all about just connections, and I also can help with this too. But that sounds really fun. And Jennifer, also same answer. Can I give my email address to everybody? Jennifer, I live down the street from West LA College, so I'd love to talk to you about that. And so please just email me, and I will make sure you get all the resources you need.
All right. Well, this is my question. For the Burbank Institute, and maybe this is more for John and Nicole, but I'm just like, my head is spinning with different fun programming things we could do. And I was just thinking, could we get, you guys together with Unreal and maybe a studio and do some sort of like cool virtual production, how to do this with your classroom on the cheap kind of a thing. But there just seem to be so many opportunities here for learning. So I'd love to keep talking about that for next summer. But Deborah, Judith, Rob, all of you, I'm really, really grateful for your time, your expertise, sharing it with all of our educators who are here. It's great to have you. We hope you'll come back. And I think that Jesse has dropped the link for our communities of practice in the chat. We do have to transition over to Zoom because obviously this is a webinar and we can't do breakouts here. So for those of you who are here that want to continue the conversation in Zoom, possibly some of our speakers might be joining us, and you can continue to ask them questions. And you can also just connect with other educators who teach in your discipline. So once again, thank you all for being here. And that's my dog.
Perfect.
Have a good day, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.